Everybody, welcome to the Alex Cuesta Daily Show. How is everybody doing out there? I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. It is Monday, April 11th of 2022. Before we get into anything fun, I like to tell everybody, as always, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. And if you like what you hear, go ahead, spread this word of mouth. Let people know this is your new favorite show. And as always, if it isn't, just lie and just let them know. Anyway, social media, go search The Alex Cuesta Show. You'll find us anywhere social media can be found. And we're pretty interactive on mostly all of them. So you'll enjoy being on there with us. Today, we have a fun, special day, something that I haven't normally have been doing as much since the Sports Opinions podcast days, but I still like to dabble in bringing on guests and talking to some guests. And I'm pretty honored to have on someone who I remember reading about Yankees and Nets coverage. Big New York sports guy. If you read New York sports stuff, you definitely have seen his name. He's formerly a writer for ESPN, New York Daily News, Yahoo Sports. Now you can find him as a lead writer for Catena Media, and he covers sports betting on playnewyork.com. Mike Mazzeo. How's it going, Mike?
I'm doing well, Alex. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. Now, you were more on the formal side for the regionals and writing with ESPN, New York Daily News, Yahoo. How has it been jumping into the sports betting side and kind of talking about more of the legislation and more of like the line stuff? How has that transition been for you?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Alex. Definitely didn't expect it. I think, sports betting had kind of always been taboo coming up in kind of traditional journalism. But as you can see, the field is expanding pretty rapidly, right? You saw like January launch, people are super into it. So yeah. I've really enjoyed kind of learning along. As I've kind of reported in the process, I've learned a lot. And so I really enjoy it, I have to say. I kind of feel like I do citizen journalism now a little bit. I dabble in a little bit of sports betting on the side. And so I can kind of keep track of the apps and, any problems that say the average bettor has, I probably encountered myself. And so I think it really helps my reporting. And, I always feel like I'm at my best when can potentially be emotional about something, right? We try to be unbiased and stuff, but a lot of times your best writing comes when you're emotional about something, upset, happy, whatever. And so, I think going through kind of those ups and downs, put myself out there a little bit. If I have a smart bet, I'll say that. But then if I have a losing bet, I think I had a devil bet where they were up 4 goals against the Panthers and lost in the third period. And you're like, the odds of this happening are like practically non-existent, but it happens. It happens to everybody. I wasn't the only one that lost that bet, obviously. So yeah, it's been really fun, getting to know the legislative side and kind of learning a lot about New York State politics, because that plays a huge role in everything. And it's something different. And it's honestly, for the first time in my career of over a decade, I have a 9-to-5 job, basically Monday through Friday. And I have my weekends free kind of. So that's really weird because the Yankees and Nets schedule used to run my life. And it's still, I still enjoy watching it, but it's nice having a Monday through Friday job for the first time.
Well, we know career politicians on all levels only like working Monday through Friday, so they're sure as hell not going to work on the weekend. So that helps you out. Now, what do you have for me here? What's some inside baseball? What's coming down the line for degenerate gamblers in New York? Any good news, any bad news, any changes coming up to how they're going to bet? What do you got for us here? I'm putting you on the spot, Mike.
Yeah. So, I think, there's a lot of things they tried to get done. We saw them put 9 operators in, right? There's a 51% tax rate, super controversial. We'll see kind of how that goes. They tried to lower it. Gary Pretlow, who's the assemblyman, and Joe Addabbo, who's the state senator in New York, they're kind of the game and wagering guys and racing guys. Yep. So they tried to pass a bill that would have added additional operators, potentially Fanatics. Who else? Bet365, Barstool Sports, Penn National. People who maybe didn't make it in that first round maybe have a chance again. And then the tax rate would go down as a result of adding additional operators, right? Which would kind of help sustainability. The state's point is basically like, you knew what you signed up for. We're making a ton of money in tax revenue. We're not going to do anything. And the operators are like, we don't know if we can sustain ourselves at this tax rate. And so that will kind of come to a head. I think that's something to kind of watch for as this year plays out, then potentially into next budget session if they don't get anything done now. They're going to have the chance to award 3 downstate casino licenses. That was the huge thing to come out of the state budget. That's what I've been working on basically the last couple of weeks, right? And so, Mayor Adams has said he'd like to have 2 of those licenses in New York. It's going to be a long, drawn-out process. They have to put a few boards together. They have to send a request for applications out to interested parties. I think there's going to be a lot of them. I think Mayor Adams would love to see a casino in Manhattan, according to sources I've talked with. And so that will be a fight because there's going to be a lot of opposition on that front from local politicians, council people that live in these communities, obviously in Manhattan. Again, they are very tourist heavy, but, bringing in that gambling aspect certainly is kind of a different deal that hasn't been here, at least in a legalized front, right? There's certainly some underground games you can find around the city, but in terms of a huge casino, that would be a difference maker, whether it's, additional crime, traffic, whatever, the usual casino issues, I think will come into play. So those are the two things I think really I've been working on a lot. I think what New York bettors can expect for now is kind of the same thing, right? You can go on your FanDuel DraftKings app, shop your lines, which you should do, whether you're betting $10, $100, $1,000, you should be shopping for the best prices long-term if you're doing it every day, right?
Yeah.
That money's add up. So definitely encourage people to do that. They can find that on our Play New York site, all the line shopping daily, whether you're putting in, futures bets on who's going to win the titles to, just betting a single game or whatever, or even betting live in game, right? So that's really, what it is. And I think probably in a few months, they'll have a better feel of what needs to come, what needs to happen. There was talk of putting kiosks in, right, to places like Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, so they become retail books. That's still a question mark. Both those stadiums will have sports books, but they're more lounges. They're more social areas. You can't actually show up and, go to the window to a teller or bet in the kiosk, right? You have to bet on your phone, but that's something to keep an eye on as well. So really just these teams are obviously all in, right? They're getting tons of money in sponsorships, partnership dollars. You're seeing the ads all over the place, right? You're watching Yankee games on Yes Network. You're seeing FanDuel, DraftKings, Bet365. Those are the three that they have multi-year sportsbook partnerships with, right? So that's what Yankee fans will see. Mets fans will see the PointsBet postgame live because they have the deal with NBC, PointsBet SNY. And so, it's going to be in your face, right? I think it's definitely new for a lot of people, but exciting at the same time. A lot of people are into it. A lot of my friends are into it. I'm sure your friends are into it. So, keeps the conversation going, engages the fans. And as long as people do it responsibly, it's great.
So it's interesting that you're bringing in a lot of the political side of it because this also is a political show. I don't just stick to sports. I do a lot more of the federal politics stuff. But maybe a lot of people that listen don't really know the New York politics side of it or kind of the state politics. I live in Poughkeepsie, New York. So I'm also involved in the whole entire New York sports betting thing. But in the least controversial way, is this a bipartisan thing that they're pushing for? Or is there one side that, all of us who like sports betting kind of have to yell at, like, hey, get on board. Let's get this done with. Like in the least controversial way, who do we need to yell at to make sure this stuff gets pushed through in our favor?
Well, I think a lot of the politicians right now will talk about how the Cuomo administration was less amenable to bringing on, besides the upstate casinos, Cuomo was hesitant and didn't want to bring online sports betting in. And really, it was kind of the coronavirus pandemic that changed the game, right? It kind of created a $15 billion deficit for the state. Yep. And so they realized, well, if we award these licenses, Cuomo wanted that 51% tax rate, which is what New Hampshire had. That's the highest in the country. The guys like Pretlow and Adabo that were pushing for more of a New Jersey model with more operators and then a lower tax rate, like the 13 to 14% range. Cuomo won out. He was a very powerful guy. Obviously, he had his missteps. And it seems like the Hochul administration, for as long as it goes, it is an election year. She has been very amenable to adding more gaming elements. And so that's how you see online sports betting go through. You see downstate casinos. She was in support of that, right? In that original budget she put out in January, she had on there, I want to be able to award these licenses. So, her husband is at Delaware North. They do have some, that is at the forefront right now, right, of the controversy going on because of the Bills Stadium financing deal and what his company might stand to benefit in terms of concessions. Mm-hmm. But, ultimately, she seems to be more amenable in that space, depending on how long she's here. Who knows, right? She may end up losing in the next election, and then we'll see how the next person, whoever that is, wants to play this thing. They might be really pro-gambling. They could be extremely anti, this is what we have. That's it for now. So we'll kind of see. A lot of it's wait and see, but certainly Pretlow and Adabo want to move things along. They want to try to get all these bills pushed through, all these expansions. They would love to get the downstate casino licensing done to realize that revenue in licensing fees for this fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2023. I think they would even like to have, if it's the existing racinos, Victory Lottery terminals, MGM, Empire City, and Resorts World NYC. I think they would love to have Resorts World NYC potentially going and converting to a full casino. If they do win the licensing, it is an open process. They're kind of considered the favorites, but we'll see what happens, right? Because there's a lot of interested parties. But I think perfect world, probably according to lobbyists I talked to, I think most optimistic timetable would be maybe Resorts World, NYC, converting Q1 2023. I think would be like if everything goes right. It might not. There's going to be, it is a significant process, but like if everything went right, I think Q1 2023 potentially you could see, some sort of full scale downstate table games, right? Blackjack, roulette, that kind of thing. Poker room potentially where you could play, those expanded games downstate.
So you're already a savvy political reporter because you completely avoided saying the Democrats are all for this or the Republicans are all for this. You avoided that completely masterfully by just kind of talking about Cuomo wasn't so hot on this, Hochul's hot on this. Do you realize you could sway the gubernatorial election if you just get a bunch of degenerate gamblers to vote for one side that's for this?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, look, the Democrats have the majority, right, in the Assembly and the Senate, and so they're kind of controlling everything. Yep. Whether that remains, I don't know, but that is what is obviously at stake at this particular point. And so the Assembly historically has been a little less pro-gambling than the Senate, and so you saw that kind of in the downstate casinos, right? It was in the one House Senate budget. It was in the governor's original proposal. It was not in the Assembly. So the fact, obviously, governor has a lot of power, Senate has a lot of power, whatever. They're also able to convince the Assembly, which voted for the huge bill that kind of had everything in it. It's called the Big Ugly in Albany, right? It had the bail reform. It had the stadium financing, which was, the hot button controversial issues. They were able to pass that. It was close in both the Senate and Assembly, but they were able to push it forward. Governor Hochul signed it today. So that kind of starts this process where they're going to put together this kind of local siting board that's going to run everything, right? There's going to be this local facility, whatever they called it, a kind of a long name, but they'll be in it from the start. And then they'll send the request out. The interested parties will put in, let's say, for example, and I think I'm saying this right, like they want one in Queens. There'd be a 6-member Queens committee. There might be a 6-member Brooklyn committee, and they'll go through kind of the zoning and they'll tier the community issues and then vote, is this a good location? Do they have the majority there to then move forward and say, okay, let's just, for example, say Las Vegas, Hard Rock, wants to build in Times Square, right? So they somehow pass that through the Manhattan local community board. And then, then the New York Gaming Commission would score it based on this whole system, right? And then we'll see, right, whether they award those 3 licenses at some point. There is no exact timetable, but that's kind of generally how it would go.
So long story short, to all the degenerate gamblers out there, do your homework on any candidate and make sure that they are for sports betting and expanding it and getting it to as many places as possible. Because honestly, it kind of goes along with if you want to spend your money in a certain way, people should be allowed to spend their money in a certain way. It's their money. So that's how I feel about it. We should just be able to figure out how the government could take their piece of it and just let people bet. Sports are funner that way when you can bet. So let's jump into some more hard sports topics, I guess. If you want to call it hard sports. Betting is as sports as it gets now. But I want to talk some Brooklyn Nets with you because you did cover Nets in the past. I feel like you still have a ton of Nets knowledge because once you cover these teams, I feel like you kind of never leave them. You're always kind of at least checking in on how they are. So first off, what's your impressions of this team as they head into the play-in? Are they in a good place right now to take care of the Cavaliers, or are they going to need this game against a young upstart Cavs team in order to get a kick in the ass before they move on to the second game? What's your feeling on the Nets as they head into the playoffs right now?
I mean, I think it's been a topsy-turvy year. It's definitely been dysfunctional, I think, at every level. Ownership, front office, coaching staff, roster, all the way down. It's been a mess. I mean, we'll see, right? I think against the Cavs, like the difference was like one team has Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to score buckets late. And then kind of like, who do the Cavs go to? Like, does Garland get hot? Does Kevin Love get hot? But those aren't guys that are a bucket here. They're also a young team. Love has, but the Nets, I think, probably top to bottom have more playoff experience. So I think Nets at home, I mean, that's probably, I think the Jared Allen injury is brutal for the Cavs defensively, especially. So I think the Nets probably advance. I mean, nothing would surprise me if they decide to give up 130 points, which they certainly could. I mean, a lot of it's just like, here's an open three for the other team. Are they going to make it or not? And then, and do that once in generation Hall of Fame, ISO ball, circus shot, or Kevin Durant just making that mid-range shot look like a layup because that's how good he is. So I don't love their long-term prospects, I think, just because defensively they've been such a mess. They're so disjointed. I mean, who's their third best player? Like, is it Bruce Brown? Is Ben Simmons really going to come back for 10, 15 minutes a night? I guess like there had been rumblings he was out there. Now all of a sudden, on the turn of a dime, he's all of a sudden an option for them. Potentially, is it game 3, game 4? What does the series look like? Who knows? I just think there's a lot of obstacles for them to overcome. I don't love like any particular team in the East. I mean, Milwaukee has that experience. Miami's going to grind down. The Celtics have Tatum, who might be arguably the best player in the Eastern Conference on like some nights with Giannis and Embiid. The Sixers with Harden potentially going through hamstring stuff and, depending on is Thibault can't play in Toronto due to the vaccine mandate or him being anti-vax, however way you want to say it. I mean, it's going to be a tough road for them and we'll see. I mean, really, there could be like, if you asked me if the Nets were to get bounced in the first round, I totally believe it. And if you said, well, the Nets are going to get to the finals and potentially compete against the Suns, I guess everything broke right for them. Patty Mills started hitting threes again. And, Bruce Brown's playing this phenomenal basketball, little floater and providing that energy spark on defense. It could just go any sort of ways for them. Their thing is as high as it gets. And then, I mean, it'd be a complete failure if they don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's just a complete failure. But I mean, that's just my opinion on it, given everything that they invest in this whole thing in this win now deal.
I certainly agree that I'm expecting Eastern Conference Finals or bust. And it's funny, you mentioned those top 4 teams outside the Nets, and I think everyone includes the Nets in a top 5 there that are legitimate contenders for the finals. And I hear people talking like, oh, these teams don't want to play the Nets. And when I think about the East, I don't think any of the 5 teams actually fear each other. I think they're all kind of, you look at the guys that lead all these 5 teams, Jimmy Butler with the Heat. He's a gamer. He's not scared of anyone. Antetokounmpo is not scared of anyone. Embiid isn't scared. Like none of these guys, all the guys leading these teams, Tatum and Brown, none of them are scared of anybody. And neither is Kyrie and Kevin Durant. They all kind of believe that they're top tier talents in the NBA and they can persevere. Now you touched on a bunch of things I wanted to ask you in that whole entire synopsis. But one of them that I want to ask is we've seen them fall into these big scoring droughts. And a lot of the times it's because, like you said, Kevin Durant and Kyrie just kind of start dribbling up the floor, setting one screen, taking a pop, forcing the issue. Is there going to be enough support in these games, even if they make it past the Cavs and they get into a series? Is there going to be enough trust in the supporting cast? Are they going to trust Seth Curry? Are they going to trust Patty Mills, Drummond, Claxton, Bruce Brown, and move the ball? Because when the Nets are moving the ball 4 or 5 times in a possession, they're damn near unstoppable. They've shown that they're one of the best teams in the NBA when they move the ball. But when they get into this hero ball situation, that's when we start to see these scoring droughts and these big, long runs. Do you think that there's going to be enough trust in the supporting cast as the playoffs go on if they do make it that far?
I think it's like, honestly, more defensively. Like, are they going to get enough stops? Like, is Kyrie going to just buckle down and play really good man-to-man defense against his guy for 40 minutes while he has to also score the ball? So worry so much about, I mean, like every playoff game last year, right? Like Blake Griffin would have the game of his life sometimes, and then that would be huge. Patty Mills needs to have one of those probably, and Seth Curry needs to have one of those. Yeah. I don't worry so much about that necessarily as I do. Can this team get stops? Can Nash figure out the right lineups and rotations, right? Like the whole thing going with Ben Simmons was this team kind of, maybe he fits them like a glove because you can kind of switch everything. They can play him and Durant as the 4-5, whatever, positionless basketball, and those guys are spectacular. And then the Joe Harris thing hurts too, because regardless of his playoff struggles, I mean, he's been there before. He isn't afraid to take that big shot. He hadn't hit against Milwaukee last year in Game 7, but he's a guy who has that experience. He's a low maintenance guy on a team full of divas, which you need, regardless of what the fans say. You need that guy who just literally comes in, does the job, and you don't have to worry about him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How are Katie and Kyrie feeling? How's Ben Simmons feeling? You're dealing with these guys who are once in a generation talent, but obviously have that other kind of sideshow going on. Joe Harris has none of that stuff. So that is a big loss for them. I agree with you. Seth Curry, he's shown in the playoffs, he has no fear. And he's really, he doesn't even need to dribble, right? Like some games still hit 6 days. How many dribbles did he take? I don't know, 4, but he just makes the most. And he has that pedigree with the brother and the family and stuff, and he's terrific. So, I mean, I just think, can they get the stops? And then with Kyrie, like, where is this guy at, right? He's been out the whole season, taking the whole season off. Now it's winning time. Is he going to be driving to the basket, getting to the line? That's something that, other reporters have. He's even kind of joked about it, but it's true, right? Like, get yourself to the line, or are you going to have that game where you hit 8, 9 threes? I mean, Kyrie is capable of anything, but I think just with him, it's that defensive side of the ball. Is he going to buckle down? Because there's a lot on the line for all these guys, really. Like, Kevin Durant basically chose Kyrie Irving over James Harden. I don't know whether that was the right move. Ultimately, it's going to be in the wins and losses in the playoffs. It's going to determine everything. And I mean, at this point, the Nets need to win because, I mean, how long is Kevin Durant going to be that top guy? He's susceptible to injuries, unfortunately. What's in general talent? You have him on your team, arguably the best player in the league, but you traded, Harden, who can still give you 15 assists for a guy who we don't even know, and Simmons, whether he's going to be out there or not. So, I mean, it's a big year for everybody in that team. And if they fall short, I mean, you just never know, right? With what the fallout's going to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kevin Durant and the way he is. And, Kyrie, my biggest fear with Kyrie is if he gets into a rhythm. We've seen him be on and off, and that comes with not playing a ton. So he just needs to find his rhythm. And I like the relationship between KD and Kyrie. They don't step on each other's toes. It's obvious that they let each other play. But my concern is Kevin Durant has played 40 minutes, a boatload this year, a lot of times. And he's been in the high 30s every game. He has barely gotten a rest, and he's done some great things. And he had that injury break, which he was recovering from an injury. I'm just concerned with how much does Kevin Durant have to give? Like, he's going to be out there. He's going to play as long as needed, and he's going to be a gamer. But, there comes a time where the legs get tired, and that automatic mid-range jumper might not be automatic when they need it. How much more do you think Kevin Durant has in the tank? Does he have enough to lead this Nets team, who I don't see sweeping anybody? They're not that type of team. They don't sweep people. They don't sit there and go wire to wire and dominate. It's very rare. They like to play the underdog. They come back. That's what they do. So we're seeing 5 to 7 game series, I think, this whole entire playoffs. Does Kevin Durant have enough in the tank, and can Kyrie find the rhythm quick enough? You mentioned him having time off and, driving to the lane and taking those hits and playing good defense, which the last 4 games of the season, they did buckle down when they needed to. The numbers were high scoring wise, but they got fourth quarter stops, which I think is what they're looking for. They don't care about the middle of the game. But that's really what concerns me is what does KD have in the tank? And like you said, is Kyrie going to play defense, and is he going to find an offensive rhythm? Because KD needs that. He needs that guy that's next to him with an offensive rhythm, because in the playoffs, you can't rely on Seth, Bruce Brown, Patty Mills, Goran Dragic, Claxton, any of these guys coming up with the 20-point game on the side, because it's not going to happen very often. So what do you feel, I'll wrap up our Nets stuff, but what do you feel about how much does KD have left essentially for this season?
I don't want to doubt KD. So I think just he's going to leave it all out there. Like that's just who he is. He just loves to play, and he's unbelievable. I guess, I mean, it just would be if he gets banged up, right? If he 5 against more physical guys, like how much of that a toll does that take? But I mean, you just live and die with that guy. That's just what it is. So I don't know. Again, I think it's really, he's like the least of the concerns. I mean, you're screwed, but you kind of, that's what happened last year, right? Like Harden got hurt, Kyrie got hurt. Why did Harden hurt? Because he's playing way too much when he had to carry the team when Kyrie went AWOL and KD was out. And that's probably stuff that's still hampering him. Like, I don't know if he's ever gotten over that hamstring thing. He probably, in retrospect, he probably came back too soon with the Nets, but he kind of had to, because they needed him, and they needed to, form some chemistry, right? The big 3 before the playoffs. That was a huge story. So I wouldn't, I just, KD's the least of the concerns. I just feel like everything else is kind of just so in flux.
Yeah. And for the record, I don't fault James Harden for wanting out. I don't know if you're the same way as me. This isn't what he signed up for. I
completely agree.
What happened with the Nets is not what he signed up for. He wants a championship. Embiid, outside of his injuries that he's had, has been relatively healthy over the last few times. And you're looking at one of the best guys. I don't blame Harden one bit for saying, hey, we made it a good run, kick rocks, get me to Philly.
I completely agree. Kyrie was anti-vaxxing, and it was, putting himself before the team and kind of sabotaging things, regardless of what people want to say about that. That's really what it is. I mean, if the Nets do not meet expectations, Kyrie's going to take a criticism, and he deserves it. And like you said, Harden wanted to play probably 30 minutes and take some back-to-backs off, be ready to go for 40 minutes in the playoffs. That was the whole idea of everything is, over on the other side of 30, and I've played a ton of minutes and carried the load and usage rate and all that stuff. And now I got two guys. As all we have to do is just get healthy for that first playoff game, like they're last year. And yeah, I think he was totally within his right to do exactly that. And I think all the stuff that the Nets purportedly stood for with the culture and all this other stuff, it was just nonsense. It was a house of cards, and we'll see. Maybe it'll somehow hold up. I mean, with Kevin Durant, you never know where into you. But again, if they fall short of expectations, I'm really to see what happens.
See, I have a differing opinion on the Kyrie situation, but I'm not going to debate you on it. There's so many differing opinions on the Kyrie situation, but in the end, he will take a clobbering if they don't succeed. And that's, it is what it is. He will definitely take a clobbering for his stance on what he did. And he knew he was going to anyway. When he took the stance, he knew he would take a clobbering on it. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, we'll see if their culture, and it will show if they do succeed and they make a miraculous run, maybe the culture is there and they did build something. So we'll see what goes on there. I'm going to put you on the spot. Gun to your head right now. What does Brooklyn do this playoffs? How far do they go? Do they win it all? What's up with them?
I don't think they win it all. I think they might win the first round, but I just can't. I can see it. There's just too many things going against them. But again, if they did, I'd be happy to take it on the chin, just take the L, but I just can't see it. I think there's too many moving parts there. If they had, Harden, Durant, Kyrie together, and those guys had played a ton, I think the ceiling would absolutely been a title, no question about it. But everything went on, and potentially having to incorporate Ben Simmons. Can he play a ton? Is he 40 minutes by the Eastern Conference Finals if you get there? There's just so many moving parts there. I just can't see it.
All right, so let's jump into some Yankees talk because the Yankees are interesting. Right now, as we speak, they're down 2-0 to what I think is the best team in the AL East and arguably a contender in the whole entire league, the Toronto Blue Jays. But I want to start off with the Yankees. I want to talk about Aaron Judge because he turned down a 7-year, $230 million, like max $230 million contract. And for me as a fan, seeing what Judge has been in terms of injuries and some of the things, I thought that was a pretty fair deal. I understand where he's coming from, wanting to bet on himself, but knowing his injury prone self, like he was relatively healthy last year, but he has suffered from injuries. He's a big dude. That happens a lot to big guys in sports, especially because Aaron Judge is pretty freakishly athletic for his size. What do you feel about the Judge contract situation? Was it a fair deal that the Yankees presented, and are they just kind of playing business at this point? How do you think this works out for the Yankees and Judge?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could see it from both sides. Like, I don't know if I feel strongly about it either. I think what I feel strongly about is kind of how it got to this point, right? It comes back to the archaic system that these teams and players are playing on, which is obviously helping the teams to kind of exploiting players in their primes, right? And so Aaron Judge, according to this Fangraphs value, which, yes, is kind of a flawed stat. Certainly, it kind of measures your production value. According to this stat, Aaron Judge to the Yankees on the field over the first 5 years of his career is worth nearly $200 million. What did he get over that time? He got $20 million. I could see his perspective saying, hey, you guys kind of owe me some back pay, right? You put me on the cover of everything. You try to sell tickets through me. I have my own members, yada, yada. So really, what am I worth to you over that first 5 years? Could be 500 million, could be 100 million a year, if not more, in terms of on-field value. The fact when he's healthy, is as good as anybody in the game. And then off the field, with the way that they're marketing him and trying to sell tickets through him, merchandise, jersey sales, the way MLB treats him to put him as the face of the game for a little bit, especially when he won the home run derby in Miami. That was like his GQ rating was an all-time high, and he's delivered in the playoffs. He doesn't say much, obviously. Again, like I think John Heyman wrote it in the post, like we don't really know that much about him. I mean, I was around him all the time. He kind of sports. I think he was a Clippers fan, I want to say, like Kevin Durant. So, you're like, you would have those kind of side conversations with him, but it wasn't that much. He was kind of, so he didn't want to give that much away. But, again, when the lights were brightest, he's hit some postseason home runs off guys that have won Cy Youngs, reliever of the year, just look at the guys he's hit home runs off. It's unbelievable, the list. So, I could see him saying like, hey, you guys kind of owe me some back pay. I think when Stanton opted in, it was interesting. I think his contract when he opted in was like 7 for $218, a little more than Judge. Maybe the Yankees could have gotten that far. I don't know. they traded Tyler Wade, which again, maybe was nothing, but that was Judge's best friend growing up through the minors. I mean, those guys were super close. On the field for the Yankees, that's fine. Tyler Wade is a fine fielder, but he's definitely a below average hitter. So I can see them saying, hey, Marwin Gonzalez or somebody, we can get an upgrade in that utility spot. But it is interesting that, again, Judge is the face of your franchise. This is a guy that's friends with them, money, and they traded him. I mean, I think Tyler Wade was in Judge's wedding. So they were, they're really two close guys. And you just wonder if like little things like that irked him a little bit. But again, if he's asking for 10 for 360 for 270, I totally understand that from his perspective of just saying, it's easy for you guys to go, okay, we can replace this guy. Who knows how he does in the Bronx if he goes, like Stanton likes out 5 times in his first game, how he's going to respond to that adversity. Judge is just so even keeled. He can go 0 for 4. He can go on an 0 for 15 slump, and you just kind of know he's going to come out of it and get that clutch hit. This is just his approach, the way he plays the game, whatever. Sets a really good tone. Now he obviously has that coveted locker that a lot of those guys, Jeter, A-Rod, CC, Brett Gardner, that one at the end of the clubhouse. So that's super interesting, like a pretty big deal to get that spot, that kind of shows you kind of where you are in the pecking order a little bit. That Cole and Judge are those guys says, hey, these are the 2 cornerstones of the team. So that's kind of, that to me is kind of interesting. So we'll see, right? I mean, they could still come to a deal at some point, if it is the offseason, okay. If the Mets or Giants got Judge, I mean, that'd be unbelievable. The Yankees would have to replace him. And I do get the fans' frustration of where, like, it always feels like the Yankees are going 85%, but they just never seem to get over that final 15%, whether it's because the owner won't authorize them to get a Verlander. Who knows if Verlander rests career like Houston. But, they obviously have that opportunity. It just always feels like they're so close. They're willing to go 90. The fan just want them to go 100. And it's like with Hal, it's just that's what it is. We're just going to go 90 and that's it. It does get stale. Getting the playoffs is incredible, no doubt. But it is that birthright, too, of Yankee fans saying, hey, we just always should be here. We should always be spending the most money. Look at Forbes, it's saying billion. The next highest team is whatever, 4 or 5. So let's, make the financial commitment to get us over the top here. And they just have never been able to do that.
Yeah, there is a frustration there. I like I said, I see, agree with you. I agree with see both sides of the coin here. I think the 7 years, 230 is a fair offer. But again, I understand Aaron Judge going, hey, I think I'm one of the best players in the league and I want to be paid that way. And I think Alex Rodriguez made a good point last night during the K-Rod broadcast, which I can't say I'm too much of a fan of. I love Alex Rodriguez's breakdowns of the games. I'm not a big fan of Michael Kay. I'm one of those Yankees fans that I will listen to John Sterling over Michael Kay any day. But he made a good point where I think if they would have just came up to like the Rendon Lindor number of just 35 a year, that I think Aaron Judge would have been like, okay, even if they were just like 6 years, 35 a year, let's do it. I feel like Judge would have probably went there. I think he's a little more realistic too. Like you said, he's even keel. So how much is it the agent kind of in his ear too? We'll find out, but we'll see. If he bets on himself and he has MVP type year, they're going to have no choice but to pony up close to $300 million, and they might have hurt themselves in their negotiating power. But it's an interesting situation. Now, you talked about the system being archaic. I want your opinion on this because for the Yankees, it's easy to kind of say that because the Yankees kind of throw money around and they can keep their young talent and pay them a lot of times if they want to. What about for the small market teams that kind of want to hold on to their superstars that are bred and they don't want them leaving and kind of want to have a good chance at them? Do you see this helping small market? Do you see this being the intent to help the small market teams and it just not doing what it's supposed to do?
I guess it's possible. I mean, I just almost wonder if you should just have everybody be free agents, get what you get. But I mean, whatever. The system is what it is. Yeah, I'm sure it was probably designed to maybe help small market teams, but ultimately, and again, I don't fault anybody for signing. It's like you see a lot of these contracts like Wander Franco, and you're like, man, I just wonder. Yeah, you're taking this money up front, which is great, and I don't know everybody's situation. But I mean, at the back of those deals, if those guys are as good as they are, they might be making 50% of what they should be. So that's again, it's definitely a conundrum. It would be good because just so many nominating on. They just became free agents earlier. Maybe instead of 6 years, it was 4. Where you get like 2 years of team control at $500,000. Then you're going through arbitration for 2 years, and then you're out. And so the players, they did make some headway here, but I think it would have been nice to see that 6 years go down. You get rid of that thing where Glaber, happened to Glaber Torres, right, where they were able to get the 7th year on him, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
By working the system, right, calling up a little late, like 2 weeks later when they they struggle. I think that was 18, right? Like they were struggling out of the gate.
Yeah.
Then he comes up and they just want,
and they did that a few times.
The way, they wanted it to, but they come up, right. They might have done it a couple times, but the Glaber thing was like they were only a couple games. Well, maybe they were a lot behind the Red Sox, but who knows, right? If they had him for that time, if that changes. And again, it's the Yankees, right? You're worth $6 billion. So just if you got to pay Glaber a year early, just if he's worth it. Now we know he went through some ups and downs since, and he should just play second base all the time. But right? But that system, I think, obviously easier said than done to change it, but players should be getting out earlier if they're going to be this impactful. And, these teams obviously want to lock them up long-term at lower rates over the course of the deals. But I mean, it's just tough for players because some of these be making more money given the way that they're impacting the league.
Certainly should. Now, you mentioned Glaber, and it's interesting you brought him up. Obviously, he's a big member of the team, but there is an obvious logjam in the infield right now. As you have Donaldson penciled in as a third base starter, you have IKF, Kindler, Falefa. I don't know how to say his last name, but he's over on shortstop, and you have Rizzo at first base. Now you have DJ LeMahieu and Torres kind of both vying for that second base position. Now I get it, DJ can Swiss Army knife, but in my eyes, with the way both DJ and Torres have played, you got to give the nod to DJ on most nights, which is a shame because Torres is such a young talent. But I feel like DJ is the guy you got to kind of find a way to fit in the lineup every single night, however you can. And I think Boone's been trying to do that over these first 4 games. But how do you feel about that logjam in the infield? And I know a lot of people are like, oh, good talent is, there's never too much talent. But right now, I think they have a little bit of an issue because Glaber is potentially the future. But DJ is one of the best hitters in baseball overall. How do you feel about that infield right now?
I'm more of the person that says it's totally fine. It'll work itself out. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody inevitably get hurt. And you have, 5 guys for 4 spots. It's going to work itself out. I wouldn't worry about that at all. I think if guys are playing 5 out of 6 games, that's fine. The Yankees, they love to keep guys off their feet. Fans don't love that when they sit guys day game after night game, whatever. But I just think over the long haul, that's totally fine. Worry about that if you have these guys out game 1 of the wild card or the playoffs. If you get in the playoffs, that's all a good problem to have. It's better to have more guys because somebody's inevitably going to get hurt. And how many Gio Urshela's and Aaron Hicks guys can you unearth where they have huge years? Just better to have somebody proven there. Donaldson or LeMahieu or Torres or Connor Falefa, whoever goes down, right? You just are able to plug and play versus, who do we call up? Is it a desperate time where Volpe or Peraza have to get called up? It's like, no, we already have this in-house solution. Those guys continue to, get at bats and develop in the minors. It's a totally good problem to have. No problem with it at all. If Glaber has to earn his playing time a little bit and he's sitting opening day, no big deal. DJ sat opening day and practically won the MVP award or whatever. So I don't think that's a problem at all.
Are you one of the guys that was kind of annoyed that the Yankees, in a way, almost settled on Connor Falefa? And that's kind of unfair to Connor Falefa because he's a really nice player. I like him a lot. He's a good glove, and I think his bat will come around. People are killing him because he had a few tough throws. People forget how tough it was for Didi to start in as a Yankee. Didi had a real rough patch and then turned it around and became a fan favorite. So I think IKF is going to have a nice time with the Yankees. But are you one of the people that's kind of annoyed they didn't go after and go hunt for Story Hart or Correa or one of these other big name guys?
I wouldn't say I'm annoyed because whatever, it's fine, whatever they do. But I would say, I just think Stanton's 32, Cole's 31, Judge's 30. Is that correct? Or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It's the prime for those guys. And I would just be going all in at this stage, right? I mean, if Volpe is as good as they say he is, and he's the next Jeter or whatever, and he's going to play short for the next 10 to 15 years, great, good. But I think personally, I didn't understand. It was just because you want to maximize that time frame with these guys because Cole could get injured, right? He's throwing 100 miles an hour. He's susceptible. Judge and Stanton, that's possible. So I just think your time's now. Eventually, they're going to be at the back of the career at some point. I had hey, these two kids, either Peraza, Volpe's a Monument Park, and they made the right choice. But I do, and especially because they didn't sign Judge long term, so now they have question marks, long term.
I agree with you there that they have some aging superstars or stars on their team that it would have been nice for them to go all in a little more. But like you said, the Yankees have been stuck at 85% in the Hal Steinbrenner era. It has never been all in with him, and that is a frustrating part. You mentioned Garrett Cole. This tonight with Taylor, he was the first starter to go into over the fourth inning. He pitched 5. Should Yankees be concerned that their starters might not be good enough? And this has been a running thing with the Yankees for a little while now, where the pen is outstanding, but the starters, you're really happy if they get into the 5th inning a lot of the times, and that's not something that I think that will win you a championship. Is there a concern again this year that the starters might not be good enough to compete overall?
I would totally agree with you on the starters. I've been saying that forever. Basically, they have like a number 1, though Cole's kind of been a 2 at times, and then they kind of have 3 or 4 solid number 4s or number 5s. Like Jordan Montgomery as your 5 is great. Cole as your 1, that's fine if he's right and he can figure out his pitches after this Spider Tech controversy, which we'll see, because against Boston he struggled, and then that first inning, the 4th thing was embarrassing, and his answer was just, I don't know, unacceptable, frankly. Yep. Everyone else waits for the LIRR or the subway or whatever, like big deal. Okay, so Billy Crystal's out there a little longer, just deal with it, right? That's the most ridiculous excuse ever, especially for a guy that's making a ton of money, like of his ilk. Just go out there 4 minutes later and pitch and get through the first inning and get your offense, at bat. Anyway, so I mean, there's just like question marks throughout, right? Is Court gonna be as spectacular as it was in the second half of last year? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. Is Tyone going to eventually get built up? I mean, he has been good tonight, and he was good in the second half. But I just think elite starting, you just think elite starting pitching, right? With like the Dodgers, Kershaw, Buehler, Bauer, whatever. Like these teams that are winning just have, whether it's Verlander, Cole, or Scherzer, Strasburg. Like, who is the Yankees number 2 or that 1A guy? I don't know. Is it Severino? In a few years? I don't know if he's that guy. I think, I mean, even more than the offense, like the shortstop, I think they really needed an impact starter. Maybe they will get that guy. Maybe it'll be a Castillo or a Montes or somebody down the line. But I really do think they need that game 2 guy where it's not going to be some sort of opener.
So with that being said about the starters, I think I'm going to know the answer to this last question here. But are they good enough to compete with the Jays or even the Sox or the Rays? Because I've seen some awful predictions out there where a lot of people are putting the Yankees as the number 2 team in this division, and they very well could be. But honestly, I think the Jays are a 100-win team. I think they're going to run away with it. And I think you look at the Sox and the Rays, I think a lot of people are discounting the Rays again. And I think they do that at their own peril because the Rays have a really good roster again. So I could see the Yankees finishing as high as 2nd. I could see them finishing as low as 4th. Where do you see the Yankees finishing this year?
I think probably in that same range as you do. I think you're right. If everything breaks right, they're probably right there. I think you're right. They're probably coming 2nd. And then, if something breaks down, right, there's a big injury, Cole gets hurt or something like that, the starting rotation just can't hack it. And, to the point of the long term, guys are getting built up right now. It feels like spring training, right? They're not facing guys 2nd, 3rd time through. They're going 3, 4, 5 innings.
Yep.
Probably hopefully by you look at that's pitching injury, that depth comes in. People are going to get hurt. So it's who steps up, who comes out of nowhere. Is it, a heel or somebody else, right? Like a Debbie Garcia who finally figures it out after hitting the low point, not being the guy I thought, and then not be able to trade him at his highest point. Mm-hmm. We'll see. But I do think, again, injuries always happen, right? You don't know what they're going to be. Is it going to be at that 2019 crazy level? Who knows? But you need guys to be able to step in. And again, the starting rotation depth, I especially and proud Toronto like you. And we'll see. Maybe they prove us wrong, but I think you're on paper unless they make a big move. They're behind some of those teams.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you coming on the show and taking some time.
My pleasure, Alex. Anytime. Hopefully I didn't say anything bad. Hopefully, you can kind of piece that together as an editor. And my apologies on the internet. That's unforeseen.
Yeah, have a good one, Mike. Thank you so much. Again, Mike Mazzeo, You can find him over at Catena Media and at playnewyork.com. He covers sports betting. You heard the legislation stuff. He also knows his New York sports. Again, I appreciate everyone for listening to the Alex Cuesta show. You can, and this is the daily version, you can find us anywhere on social media by searching The Alex Cuesta Show. Spread this word of mouth. And as always, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on iTunes and Spotify. I appreciate everyone for listening to this. I really enjoy doing all this stuff as always, and I hope you enjoy listening to it too. Everybody, so long.